Hi everyone, delonewolf here. Welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. It's FanFest weekend. I've tried to watch a decent amount on the stream. On the first day I did watch the opening ceremony and the EVE Online keynotes, of course. First reaction, I can understand that a lot of people feel like it was a little bit light on details and on actual future announcements, especially in the Nova department. I feel a little bit disappointed by that as well. But to be honest, CCP Hilmar said that he's still very much dedicated to get that going. And well, the feedback that they got from the last FanFest where they showed a little bit of Nova was that it didn't feel like EVE. And personally, I think that it's better that they take their time and do this right than that they come out with a product that people don't like because it doesn't feel right or doesn't feel like it belongs as an EVE shooter. Anyways, FanFest itself seems to be going pretty damn well, and I'm actually really curious about all of the new PvE content that CCP is developing at the moment. Of course, we are here for the market, so let's jump in. As always, we will start with Plex. It's going to be at 115. There we go. And Plex are up substantially. We're back well above the 1.2 billion mark on the chart here. It's actually quite drastic. You can see that there was a little bit of a pullback, which was due to a sale that CCP launched on Plex, 15% off or something like that. Didn't manage to do too much. The 20-day moving average is still climbing. Now the 5-day moving average is climbing, and we are actually above 1.2 billion for Plex. Volume wise, I'm seeing a little bit of a drop. Of course, here we have this volume increase for several days during the Plex sale that decreased the price a little bit, but now we're back in normal trading territory, and it looks like demand is still a sky high. 1,226 million is what the sellers are asking for their Plex at the moment. Buyers 1,174 million. And if we look at the perimeter stations, well, we're dipping below a billion too, so 1,195 million for the sellers there. And for the buyers, do we go up a lot? No, not really that much, 1,182. So at this point, honestly, I'm gonna sell a couple more Plex for myself because I think above 1.2 billion is actually a pretty good price. If you look at the chart as well, above 1.2 billion is close to this stop that we also saw with the Ascension expansion. So I personally feel like this is actually a time to sell, not to buy. And then the summer usually does mean a little bit lower activity. So I do think that after FanFest, maybe with a post-FanFest sale or something like that, we'll start declining and we could actually start getting cheaper Plex. One thing to note, of course, is that after FanFest, at any time, really, the Plex division, the changes to Plexes into the smaller, more granular Plex is going to take place as well, and that could still shake up the market quite substantially. Although from my personal expectation, I think it should put pressure on Plex because all Aurum is also going to get converted, and at least some of that should mean more supply. We'll have to wait and see. Of course, Plex does tend to do weird stuff that goes completely counter to my personal expectations. Next up, the multiple pilot trading certificate, of course, going back up as well after a bit of hesitation during the Plex sale. We're lacking supply here quite substantially, 1,235 million. I think maybe people expect this to be phased out or something like that with the Plex changes. Trade volumes are pretty much abysmal as well. 10-15 a day is about all that we can manage. The body resculpt. So this was a huge Aurum sale that caused this massive dip here and this huge volume increase down to, let's say, 200 million ISK or something like that. We're now recovering from that. We're back at 270 million, which is probably a normal price compared to Plex. 274 million for the sellers, 226 for the buyers. Another one that I don't think is going to get phased out. It's just going to cost a number of Plex in order to actually create that item. Skill extractors could be somewhat interesting, but here, of course, with skill extractors, we know, which have been going for a year now, by the way, we know that they mirror Plex very, very closely because basically the conversion to Aurum and then to skill extractors takes no in-game speculation or anything like that. It's just a straight up one-on-one conversion. And so you have the same dip that happened during the Plex sale, and now the recovery, our way back up. 20-day moving average, same pattern as with Plexus. They're currently selling for 282 million ISK, and the buyers are at 262 million. And finally, skill injectors, those were going up last week as well, despite the Plex sale and the dipping of plexus and skill extractors. These kept going up. This base has slowed a little bit, so basically we're starting to go flat on skill injectors, which I think is not good news for the margins of the people that are farming skill points themselves, because skill extractors have gone up in price, so the cost of purchasing those should have gone up as well. And if the price doesn't increase at the same pace here, that means that their margins are shrinking once again. Skill injectors currently going for 683 million ISK, and the buyers are at 655 million ISK. I'm curious to see how this is going to play out compared to the new plexus when that plays, when those come. I actually feel like, because skill injectors are in the right spot, less than a billion ISK, it's something that's a bit easier to tackle, but can still, with 10%, 15% profit, can still be a worthy trade on an individual item. And I think skill injectors could basically replace a lot of the function that Plex has now, which is a store of value, a hedge against inflation. If plexes get cut down into the very small chunks, basically becoming a bit of more of a currency itself than something that you trade for ISK and then do your stuff with, I think that there is very high chance that skill injectors could take over that role a little bit as a hedge against inflation. That's my expectation, at least. After that, after Plex, we're going to move on to some minerals at 7 minutes. Very good, very good, right on the money. Next up here we've got titanium. We can start to see that we're basically recovering from the Rorcal nerf that caused the price to increase a little bit towards 4.3, 4.5, something like that for titanium. And at the moment, normal market forces are basically swinging the price up and down a little bit around the current trade range, but nothing drastic is happening anymore. We would need another change to the resources to mining, something like that, or a massive war to actually start to change this. So 4.3 ISK first sell order, that's not that much anymore than 435, 436. On the buyer side, 429, very, very small margin. Incredibly small margin, in fact. And when it comes to supply demand, a billion units here, 1.6 billion units here, and on the demand side 1.5 billion and 2 billion units. So you can see that it's decently supplied, decently balanced, I should say. Both supply and demand are decently strong, and the current price range seems to be accepted by the market in general. So at the moment, I would expect a little bit more of a sideways movement when it comes to the minerals, especially the high-sec minerals. I think those are stabilizing. Here again, pyrite dipping to that very low point of around 5 ISK. Then we had the Rorcal nerf, and here now it's trying to find its trade range. It's having a bit more trouble because we keep being under pressure. I think basically some pyrite stocks still coming to the market, but we can also see here in the last few days that we're going up a little bit in price. I think we'll start moving around the 6 ISK price range, 585 for the sellers, 5.8 for the buyers. Yeah, just below 6 ISK I think could be where pyrite is going to start trading at. When it comes to supply demand here, 120 million, 170 million, 370 million here. On the buyer side, 100 million, 285 million. That's already more than a day old, and then we have to go down quite a bit to a billion units here at 547. So here I would say that pyrite might still be under pressure a little bit from oversupply. And yeah, 575, something like that, could actually turn out to be the right trade range. It depends on whether or not these supplies here are old stocks from the Super Rorcal that got nerfed, or if this is an actual supply, fresh supply that keeps coming in and is going to continue that pressure, and then is of course going to drive the price down a little bit. Next up we've got Mixalon, the one good high-sec mineral, the one that managed to maintain its price despite the Rorcal changes that happened with the Ascension expansion. So here we can see that there was a bit of a dip right after November, but we managed to stay above 50-55 ISK here. Then we actually had the resurgence as Nullsec found out that Mexalon was their major bottleneck when it came to their local production, back up to 75 ISK, which is a really good price for Mexalon, historically speaking. And then of course with the Rorqual nerf we actually jumped up to 80 ISK, and now we're just recovering from that, heading back towards a more regular 75 ISK. Currently Mexalon is selling for 77.10 ISK and the bars are at 75.2. Again, if you're a HiSec miner, you definitely want to prioritize ores that yield Mexalon, because it is the one that is probably your best ISK per cubic meter and your best ISK per hour as well, compared to tritanium and things like that. This is the one HiSec mineral that managed to maintain a really strong price through all of these Rorqual ORCAD changes, mining changes that has been introduced since the Ascension expansion. And here we get Isogen, a little bit of the exact opposite of Pyrite. We still have the same dip down to close to 40 ISK. I mean, historically speaking, crazy low for Isogen. You can see almost an entire year of nerf expectations with the Rorqual and ORCAD changes having been announced well before the actual Ascension expansion. Then it launches, we get this massive supply that comes from everywhere basically, and then here the Rorqual nerf comes in, and we are recovering just a little bit, but we're basically trading Isogen at around 50 ISK, which is still very low compared to what it used to be before all of these changes. 51.88 for the sellers, 50.16 for the buyers, decently small margin as well. Sellers though are starting to win out a little bit, 20 million here, 25 million here, another 15 million over the course of no, maybe not, let's say another, yeah, if we count the first order here, another 15 million coming in as well in the last 24 hours. Buyers are a bit more timid, 1.7 million, 2.5 million, 2.6 million, but we can also see that we are at basically a little bit of a higher stretch here on the 5-day moving average that is up a little bit. So these are actually normal market forces when prices go up a little bit, and unfortunately 51.88 for Isogen is up a little bit. Then you've got this extra supply that comes in, will start going back down possibly towards 50 ISK as this supply is being absorbed by the market, but then they see, oh well, it's 50 ISK, we might want to hold off a little bit and wait for the price to recover, and then we'll jump back up. But this is basically the trade range that we are settling at the moment. And for HiSec minerals, it's still not great, but at least it's not a continued downtrend that was pretty bad after the Ascension expansion. Noxium, it's true, it's a HiSec mineral, basically, because it can be mined in pretty vast quantities in HiSec, but it is not for all HiSec spaces. So it's only a couple of ores that actually yield this, that cannot be mined everywhere. So I'm sort of considering Noxium myself as an in-between mineral, because I actually think that a major part of the supply is not HiSec, but is Wormhole space, Lowsec and Nullsec as well. So this one is always a bit of a strange one. You can see that it was hit really hard with the Ascension expansion as well, dipping below 300 ISK. We used to have to pay 1000 ISK for Noxium at one point, so keep in mind that it was already hit really badly with more than a year ago an ore rebalance in Nullsec to give them a bit more of an edge compared to HiSec mining. Noxium got nerfed into the ground because of that, into the 450 trade range. Then the Ascension expansion hits, we're dipping below 300 ISK, but with the Rorqual nerf, the recovery here is quite a bit more substantial, back up to 370 on its best day, and we're currently trading this around 350. So from 290 to 350, you know, that's around a fifth of the price. It's definitely not that bad, much better than what we're seeing for Pyrite, for instance, or for Isogen, for instance. And so this does, I think, indicate that where Isogen, Pyrite, you know, a change in Nullsec supply doesn't really matter all that much for the Jita market. For Noxium, yeah, it actually does matter quite a little bit what happens in Nullsec as well, despite the fact that most people would consider this to be a high ISK mineral. Sellers 373 ISK, buyers are at 354 ISK. Supply though is overtaking demand with 10 million here. Here we get 1 million and 3.6 million for the buyers. So a little bit careful. Noxium might get under pressure just a little bit from that oversupplied situation, but we can clearly see that the recovery was much more sharp after the Rorcal nerf right here, which is quite interesting in my opinion. For Nelsec, let's start here with Zydrine. Unfortunately, unfortunately for producers that want to use Zydrine, this is good news. Every coin has two sides, of course, but it's under pressure again, going towards 950 is on an average sale, 956 for the sellers, 950 for the buyers of Zydrine. When it comes to supply, not good news either. 7 million here, 2 million here, 4.5 million here in the last few days. The buyers though, they're waiting for prices to drop even lower. We're talking very small numbers, less than 1 million. You have to go to 936 for a 1.8 million buy order of Zydrine. So clearly a lot of supply still coming in, and the price is staying below 1000 ISK, which is historically speaking pretty cheap for Zydrine. So if you're looking to build up some stocks, for speculation, I would be very careful, but it's definitely possible on the buyer side of things. But for production, yeah, you're definitely grabbing cheap Zydrine at the moment. Megasite next, unfortunately, also sliding back. This one was doing really well, managing to stay around 1400 ISK for quite a bit, even above 1500 ISK as well in January. So this one was doing quite nicely as well. It was also a recovery in right at the Ascension expansion. We can see right here Megasite at 1000 ISK or less than that. Zydrine pretty much in the same place. So we had this weird thing happening with the Rorcal changes, the announcements there, all the speculation. Megasite at one point actually cost less than Zydrine, something that I had never seen before. It was really crazy. So this recovery meant that things were back to normal a little bit. Megasite is worth more than Zydrine. Phew. The world once again makes a little bit more sense, and we can unfortunately see though that basically the increased prices of a lot of the other minerals meant that Megasite is starting to be under pressure here, and at the moment we're diving below 1300. 1263 ISK for the sellers, 1240 for the buyers. This could be not so much due to supply demand itself. I think Megasite will be oversupplied, but we're not talking such huge numbers in the last 24 hours, maybe a few million coming in. So this could actually be something to really keep in mind when it comes to the EVE economy, that there is much more stuff out there than there is ISK. So the fact that a lot of ISK is probably flowing into these other minerals. You can see Mexlon being higher, you can see Noxium, that recovery here, you can see Tritanium recovered, you can see Pyrite tried to recover a little bit, it's not so great, but they did alright, and then Isogen as well. That ISK could mean that basically the wallets in general, when it comes to minerals, decide to not invest so much in Megasite, which is actually causing this drop in price. This is actually something that a couple of fanfests ago was brought by CCP Quant with the numbers. Back then there was 3 times more stuff in New Eden than there was ISK. So if you had to basically value everything at ISK in percentages, you would have to drop prices really quite substantially, which means that, you know, there's just not that much ISK to go around into everything. You cannot have a uniform increase in price of everything. We have an increase in price of most of the minerals since the Rorcal nerf, and someone has to pay the price for that, and it seems to be Megasite in a decently big way, because going from 1500 to 1300 when all other minerals go up in price is actually decently substantial. And then finally we have Morphite as well, also probably one of the losers here. Morphite is a bit different because it is related to Tech 2 production, not to Tech 1 production, and it is dipping below 9000 ISK once again, I think. Sellers 9200, buyers 8800 ISK. Again, historically speaking, very cheap Morphite here. A big war with some Tech 2 losses could actually swing this up quite nicely. There we go, that's minerals. Let's move on to some PI at 1940. Okay, we'll start here. All right, I'm quite surprised. PI in general was doing really well. We had a very strong summer for a lot of PI materials. We're just coming off of a very strong fuel-related PI month, I would say, something like that. And to see construction blocks here once again go up towards 15,000 ISK, which is basically playing again with the one-year highs here, is quite interesting. 14,346 for the sellers, 13,000 for the buyers. You can see that we are currently selling well above average, incredibly good price for construction blocks. So again, we're working on a very strong situation for some of these PI materials, and we thought here maybe in March when we were dropping back towards the average that we could take a breather, but nope, we're right back up towards a one-year high right here. Next up, we've got consumer electronics. Last week or maybe 10 days ago, we reached a peak at 17,400 ISK, which is incredibly expensive. At some point, of course, that can't keep going up, so we have to recover a little bit. But we're still holding at 15,000 ISK, which is well above average. I would put the average here at maybe 13,500 or even lower than that, considering where this chart starts here. 12,500 could actually be a normal price for consumer electronics as well. 15,400 for the sellers, 14,000 for the buyers. Quite decent margins starting to form here, probably because of the dip, which could put some extra pressure on there, but still again well above average for consumer electronics. A very strong start of April here. Coolants is fuel related. That one here, you can see the decently strong summer, although a little bit delayed, bit of a peak in August, bit of a peak in September. But here in February, March, we had a big jump up in fuel prices in general, and PI was probably one of the major culprits there, because you can see here coolants going up above 15,000 ISK, 16,000 ISK even. On average was quite expensive. That of course is a story that cannot continue indefinitely, and so now we're falling back. Sellers could be quite interesting. 12,700 around average, buyers 12,300. So I would say that coolants is recovering, coming back in its normal trade range due to more supply. It's very easy to produce coolants. All you need is a gas planet, which is very common. But we're still doing all right despite the fallback, of course, from 16,000 to 12,500 here. We're still on the average. So hopefully this will mean slightly cheaper fuel as well. Enriched uranium, definitely not going back down anytime soon. 17,500, you can see we're at a one-year high, and we're actually staying there for like around 2 weeks already, which is quite substantial. 18,400 ISK for the sellers, 17,600 almost for the buyers. Enriched uranium, one-year high, an incredibly good a good product to produce at the moment. Or if you have stocks lying around, bring those to the market, because you're getting a really nice ISK for that product compared to the rest. You know, you could put the average at maybe 14, 13,000, 14,000 ISK, something like that. So another one, really strong April here once again. You can also see that August, September was a really strong summer as well, going up to 17,500 ISK. Definitely above average right there as well. Mechanical parts next, that one was almost an anomaly because it had a bit of a weak summer here, less than 10k in August, but then in September we started to climb, and we've not stopped climbing since last week, 15,500. At some point, of course, you have to give a little bit of ground. Nothing goes up indefinitely. And here we basically recovered back to 14,500. Currently selling for almost 15,000 ISK for mechanical parts, which is just like coolants, very easy to make on barren planets. Another very common planet type in New Eden. Buyers are at 14,000 ISK. This is still well above average and definitely worthwhile to bring to the market. Oxygen next. Alright, pretty sharp dip here and a bit of a recovery, but under pressure again at the very tail end. In fact, current daily averages of around 400. That's not great. 454 first seller coming in. 480 is probably a more likely price. 430 ISK for the buyers. 1.2 million here. It's gonna put a bit of a floor here, but Oxygen is clearly under pressure at the moment. Tried to recover from that dip to 400 ISK, did a little bit, but you can already see that more supply is coming in. Oxygen is basically one of the components of coolants, I think. I'm not exactly sure, but it is extremely easy to produce, so I'm not that surprised that something like this, a high point of 540 ISK for oxygen, creates a massive supply increase that actually crashes the price well below its average, because it's just so easy to produce and to bring in massive quantities to the markets. Next up here we've got robotics. This was a really good summer, but what's happening here in the latest month is just blowing everything out of the water, of course. 110,000 ISK for robotics in August, September here. You know, we did really well, and here this surprise surge is also tied to fuel blocks for robotics, so it's really incredible to see this. Of course, at some point you have to give ground here again, but the recovery of the price is pretty slow, so we're still well above average for robotics as well. 123,000 is for the sellers, 112,000 for the buyers. Normally, robotics is below 100,000 ISK, so that gives you a bit of an idea. Again, really strong PI market at the moment with very strong demand. Rocket fuel next. This was always a bit of an anomaly, and it still does that with the median daily prices being all over the place. It's really weird, but you can see that we used to trade rocket fuel at around 12,000 ISK. Then we had this massive jump up earlier this year, and since then we've basically been trading at around 13,500, 700 trade range, something like that. 13,300 for the sellers, 13,000 for the buyers. So at the moment we're basically at a bit of a low point. The question is, will the price recover here, or are we set to go back to this average that we maintained for several months, or that was the normal trade range before? So this is completely different. You can clearly see for robotics, for instance, that we have this massive surge, coolants as well. We have this surge and then this pullback. Mechanical parts, basically a constant increase over several months. This rocket fuel chart, it still keeps baffling me that it's really weird with the median daily prices all over the place like that. A pretty stable market as well. Then we have this jump up, and this, if we can disregard this anomaly, we're basically now stable at this trade range here. So I can't really tell you what's at play here. This one is just really doing something completely different from the entire PI market. Self-harmonizing power cores next. I felt like this was jumping the gun a little bit. Self-harmonizing power cores are used in structures, of course, with the announcement of the drilling platforms costing more than an engineering complex but less than a citadel. We could have, you can expect that there will be a decent amount of PI needed to produce those, but I felt like pushing the price up just at the announcement, knowing that they're only going to come after the summer. It looks like it's planned for winter now. This is definitely jumping the gun here, and the market recognized that. We started at 2 million, we went up to 2.6 million, we're back at 2.08 million on average. 2 million for the sellers, first ones coming in, 2 million for the buyers right here. This is going to continue to be under pressure. If PI recovers with the base prices throughout the summer, which I think is definitely possible, then we could actually see some cheap and an actual investment opportunity before the winter in these advanced PI materials that are related to structures. Superconductors next. This one here a bit early for its strong point in June, then here in December we had a strong point again. But here unfortunately we had this dip down towards 12,000 ISK, which is still quite respectable, but we're basically now starting to trade at its average, I would say. 13,300 for the sellers, probably a little bit above average. 12,300 for the buyers, probably a little bit below the average. So superconductors is in an okay spot, but if you want to wait for a better opportunity, then don't bring them to the market. And if we start dipping below all of this, you know, towards 10,000 ISK, that's when you want to start investing in superconductors. Test cultures next. I'm not doing too hot. This is the one that I've been buying some stocks of that when we're well below 8,000 ISK here. So 8,600 for the sellers, 8,000 for the buyers. That buy opportunity is over. but we can clearly see now that this culture is hesitating at this trade range. Still, look at the potential, buying for around 7,500, selling at 15,000 twice last year. I think it's a long-term investment, but I think it has potential. It's really the one PI material that we check here. There are many more in the entire market, but these are supposedly, I think, really good ones to gauge the entire market. These have also been suggestions when I added the PI category to ETH Talk from the viewers, so I think that they've done a really good job here. And Test Cultures is one of those that, you know, when it was below 8,000 ISK, I think it was alright to buy this as a bit of speculation, a bit of an investment for the future. The potential is right there on the charts. Doubling your price is possible on those. Finally, here we've got Witware mainframes. Is similar to the self-harmonizing power cores. It's related to structures. So we were going down, down, down since basically the Ascension expansion, with the engineering complexes not costing a lot. And we were going down towards 2.3 million right here. Then at the announcement of the drilling rigs, this was had a bit of a jump up, but we're already back on our way down, selling for 2.3 million. Bars are also at 2.3 million, so this is obviously going to start to compete with each other, but I think the net result is going to be that we're going to continue this slide down right here. So that's PI, and next up we have some Tech One chips, and I have been lazy, damn it. 3105. I didn't change them up. I said last week that I think I should start changing them up, but I completely forgot. So we're gonna do another one right here. The Tech One market honestly has not been very interesting lately because it's so highly influenced by the mineral market. It's under pressure because minerals have been so cheap. So we can clearly see here for the bigger ships, especially like the Apocalypse battleship, that since the Ascension expansion, we've just gone down in price, and that is because it's become so cheap to produce these Tech One battleships. So an Apocalypse is currently trading for 150 million for the sellers. Buyers are at 142 million as well. What is basically keeping any of this from recovering is that demand for Tech One ships is very low at the moment as well. The meta is much more aligned with faction battleships at the moment, Tech 3 ships as well, although that's probably gonna get nerfed, and some Tech 2 small ships, right? Interceptors, stealth bombers, things like that are what's being used at the moment. So if we ever see maybe a rebalance of Tech 1 battleships to bring them back into the meta, stuff like this could change. But at the moment, in general, the Tech 1 market is not seeing a lot of demand. Here's the arbitrator as well. Since the Ascension expansion, you can see the drop in price. The one weird thing is that we were actually dropping well below the Ascension expansion as well, which was probably due to the lack of demand right here. Arbitrator selling for 8.7 million, buyers at 7.7 million. Quite a large margin here. Average price a bit above 8 million, so it's actually the sellers that are mostly winning out at the moment. Bellicose next, not as pronounced. It's of course it's smaller than a battleship, so cruisers tend to have fewer minerals in them, thus the mineral impact could be a little bit lower. And here we see we start at 9 million at around November, 8 million around this time frame. 8 million for the sellers, 6.8 million for the buyers for a Bellicose. The Breacher here, it's another frigate, but we can clearly see here that the trade range used to be around 500,000 ISK. Then we have a December dip here. This increase in price, probably the Ascension expansion and the Alpha clones. Tech 1 frigates are of course their go-to first ships that you want to use in PvP. But yeah, to no avail. The mineral market basically caused all prices to drop here, and as a result currently Breachers are being sold for 420,000 ISK. Lack of demand is clearly shown right there. The Brutix next, despite the increase in price here, up to 50 million for the sellers and 49 million for the buyers. What we can still see though is that before the Ascension expansion these were trading for 55 million. Here we have the mineral market crash, and now it's still trading below this trade range, despite the fact that at the moment we're at a high point. We're still below the average of before Ascension, and the demand here we can see that it's still not that strong. The Catalyst next, one of the best ganking destroyers here, but here 1.25 million on average. December it took a little bit longer for this one to decrease in price, and are we well 1.2 million. We're recovering a little bit in the catalyst. Maybe there is some more planning of some shenanigans, some high-sec ganking in the works here. Maybe we see a little bit of higher demand because of the nature of the ship itself. But 1.2 million, 1.25 million, we're still a little bit below that average, and the ascension dip right here is clearly visible. Catalysts have traded for less than $1 million for quite a while. Cormorant next. This one has this slight anomaly that it actually went up in price recently above its average because of the change to its model. So whenever CCP does update a ship like that, it does tend to come back into the limelight a little bit, sees an increase in demand, but that doesn't last very long. You can see here we're back to trading these guys for 1,150,000 ISK, 1 million for the buyers here. So the cheap cormorants are back. Crucifier, that's quite interesting that this one jumps up just a little bit to 300,000 ISK. We get this little volume spike, so someone noticed that crucifiers were going for ridiculously low prices and probably bought everything below 325,000 ISK, 350 maybe, something like that, and that jumped up in price a little bit. Quite interesting. It could be an investment. It could be just some alpha fleets in the works for some crucifiers, which, you know, they're so cheap that why not buy a couple hundred of them, go fly them and lose them. It really doesn't matter all that much. So it has advantages, this very cheap Tech 1 market, but I would say that the lack of demand is still a problem here. The Drake next used to be such an iconic ship and really hasn't known too good a time in the last few years here. Currently trading for 45 million for the sellers, 41 million for the buyers for such an iconic ship. That's quite unfortunate, but yeah, it's just not happening. Here's the Retriever actually coming back a little bit after dipping to a very low point of 18 million ISK for a Retriever, currently selling for 23 million and 20 million for the buyers. And finally here we've got the Tempest, that is battleship, more minerals, much more pronounced situation when it comes to the Ascension expansion and the mining changes. So here it used to be a trade range of around 180 million, Ascension expansion hits, current trade range 150 million, currently selling for 158 bars or 133 for a Tempest, which is also actually decently popular in nullsec. So this is probably why we're seeing a bit more movement on the chart here with some volume spikes as well, because when they go really cheap, nullsec is willing to purchase quite a few Tempests for their fleets. So yeah, the Tech 1 market, unfortunately, unless something really drastic happens in the meta, I don't think this is going to change anytime soon. Next up, we've got Tech 2 ships at 3750. Here, the Tech 2 market, it used to be really an incredible place for speculation, for doing Twitch trades, because some of these ships, as we can see right here, would dive down from 25 to 20 million, and much bigger changes were actually possible here in a matter of days, weeks. So that was really great if you wanted to actively trade, if you wanted to take gambles. The Tech 2 market was incredible for that. Unfortunately, with the Citadel expansion, there have been tax changes that caused more taxes on the entire production line basically of Tech 2 ships, which caused all of them to really become very boring, very stable. But lately, the smaller ships like the Interceptors, the Stealth Bombers and the Interdictors have actually been making a bit of a comeback when it comes to volatility. So here, for instance, we see that the Ares managed to climb up to 27 million several times, where you could buy these for 20 million if you wait for the right opportunity. And so these are back a little bit, and it's actually good to see. Unfortunately here, 22 million for the Ares is right in between them, 20.5 million, still a bit too much to buy, 22 million too early to sell. So that's not where you want to make a move, but at least there is some volatility coming back in these small ships, which, for instance, the claw here clearly shows 2 spikes up to 30 million and the dips below 20 million on the buy opportunities, which happened here as well. A jump up to 27 million, so there was a slight sell opportunity a couple of weeks ago. At the moment, though, claws still selling for less than 20 million, which could be a worthwhile investment. You can clearly see that we're under pressure. Not yet as low as we would like to see it, but you could maybe start some investments there. The crow next, this one, you know, here very nice spike in October. Then in January we had a bit of a spike as well, up to 28 million a couple of times. At the moment here we're back down at the lower end of things. Less than 23 million seems to be a dual average. 21.5 million, the lack of demand here. The crow would be one where you could actually invest a little bit for a gamble. Next up we've got the Aries. That one was a little bit unusual, trading well below its average for several months. Now we're basically back at 46 million, which was a normal price. So sellers 44 million, buyers 32 million. That's really a lot of supply coming in here. Well, it's not that much, so we could actually jump up quite quickly if you could buy some Aries for less than 40 million, which with these buyers is easily possible, and then hope that everything sub 48 million gets sold out. You know, you could have a quick 20% trade that could happen right here. Next up here we've got the Flycatcher. This one also went up here from 53 million, nice spike up to 75 million in March, not bad. Currently we're still in the recovering process, so if we take one of the low points, 54 million, 57 million for the buyers, still unfortunately not the right time to buy these, but it again shows that just in March we had this great sell opportunity, and maybe a month before that we had a great buy opportunity. The Heretic next, this is a great chart. Look at that, starting here, 45 million seems to be a really decent cutoff point for investing in Heretics, and then they jump up to 60 million here in July, here in November, here in January, and here in April once again. So this is really good. Sub 45 million for the buyers. Are we there yet? Nope, 51 million. So we need some patience, but I think with 1, 2, 3, 4 sell opportunities and 1, 2, 3 maybe 4 buy opportunities, it shows that at least the Tech 2 market is alive and you can still do some speculation. Unfortunately, the bigger ship you go, the lower the volumes go, the lower the volatility is. So it's really in the small ships, I think, that we want to keep watching for those opportunities. It's also these frigates especially are flown in massive numbers in Nullsec, lost very quickly, so the start of a war could actually trigger some really good stuff. Unfortunately for the Hound here, we can clearly see that the chart is between these two peaks and their low points, so that's a no-go. For the Hounds, buyers at less than 20 million looks okay, but I think we could actually go even lower than that. If you look at this chart, 18 million should probably be the Hound cutoff point. Next up here we get the Malediction. Here again we get a little bit of volatility. We're currently recovering from a slight spike up to 27.5 million, 25 for the sellers, 23 for the buyers, so a little bit too early to buy and too late to sell again. Here's the Manticore. This is unfortunately not what we want to see. We want to see this part of the chart right here, right, with lows to 22.5 million and highs at 27.5, sometimes even 30 million. 1, 2, 3 lovely spikes with actual recoveries towards 22.5 million. Here we're settling right in between at 25 million. That's not where we want to be for the Manticore. So yeah, again, not the best situation unfortunately, but at least here September, October, December, January showing the potential. Nemesis next, finally dipping a little bit below that situation. Still, I would like to see this well below 20 million. Buyers are at 20 million, so still a little bit too early. But it could happen, because here again we can see that there is no demand, supply keeps trickling in, so who knows, the Nemesis at some point in the upcoming weeks might become interesting for an investment. The Purifier, actually jumping up a little bit from, let's take a look here, 22 million to 26 million. You know, you could do something with that trade, although you have to be at the exact right time. I would personally love to see the dips go back towards 20 million here, 22.5 million. So again, we're recovering from that, too early to buy on this one. It's quite unfortunate, but here's the Saber. This is great. Look at that. Very stable before this, but so you could have bought these for less than 50 million, and here we have 67 million twice. Two lovely spikes here, and we're currently dipping back down on massive volumes. So does that mean that we're well oversupplied? Yeah, definitely looks like it. Look at that. Even now in the last 24 hours, still 50-60 of them coming in. Bars are at 48 million, which is less than 50 million, which is probably around here on the chart. Now look at the potential in case of volatility. Not bad. Saber looks interesting. Crow looks pretty interesting as well, if you actually want to take a bit of a gamble on the Tech 2 market in the foreseeable future. Next up, the Tech 3 market, 45 minutes. Here we go. So the Tech 3 cruisers are getting a rebalance. I think there is some information out there. I just haven't found it yet. So I must have missed it. If you can direct me, if you're still here, and if you know of the Tech 3 rebalance information where I can find it, please post that in the comments, because I have no idea what's actually happening. So one comment said that they might get rid of the punishment for skill points, reduce the number of modules, and probably nerf them so that they're not the best at, let's say, tanking, sick tanking, so that they actually have battleship HP, stuff like that is probably going to get nerfed. So but I'm not exactly sure. I would love to see where the information is actually coming from. Let's start with the destroyers. Unfortunately for the Confessor, still trading at 30 million, massively oversupplied at 30 million. So this one could be your investment for the later future, right? Pick some up at 28 million if you can. Could be good, but it remains a bit of a gamble at the moment. The Hecate last week saw this lovely spike. I actually sold my Hecates that I bought for 27 million. Or is 29 million? Didn't it? The Hecate dip below that? I guess the bottom was actually 29 million, but I bought at least a couple at 29 million, sold them for 45 million a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, during this increase in price here, quite surprised I actually managed to catch that. And now of course we're recovering from that, so you're a little bit late to sell your 29 million Hecates for 34 million. Still a little bit of money, but it's not the best trade that you could have made. Still, it shows the potential of buying at these crazy bottoms below 30 million. Next up here we get the Jackdaw, also a little bit of a jump up to 41 million. So I don't think I sold those, because I think that there is more potential in there, and you could have bought these for 27 million. Currently trading for 35 million. Bars are at 30 million as well. And then we have the Zweppel, which is unfortunately in a very similar situation to the Confessor, still trading at 30 million and still massively oversupplied, 229, 120, 122. The market just can't absorb these kinds of numbers. This is still, you know, if you're gambling that a Hecate spike might happen in the Confessor and the Zweppel as well, then you should be buying some of these, trying to pick up on the buy order side of things. But it's still a little bit of a gamble, because the general vibe in Tech 3 is that it is oversupplied. And I still think that if the cruisers get hit with nerfs, this could end up being bad for all of them. One point that was made, if it is true that they'll take away the Tech 3 skill punishment, so if a Tech 3 ship is destroyed, you lose skill points in that Tech 3 field. If that gets rid of, it could actually increase the amount flown, but it's so heavily in the meta already in nullsec and in wormhole space and it's not that useful in highsec for exploration, because you can't do a 4 out of 10 in those, that I'm not seeing the increased usage and the increased demand just because of that. That's just my personal read on the situation. I need to get the information. So here is the Legion itself, bit of a spike up here, but currently selling for 129 million. The bars are at 121 million, so they're very cheap. They're at 1 year lows, but I actually pulled the trigger on a couple of them, so I think I have some Lokis lying around, a Proteus and a Tengu as well, but I'm not gonna buy any more of those because I don't think it's a good idea. Next up here we get the Loki. That one keeps dipping. As you can see here, it was a bad idea to buy Lokis at this dip here, which was also 1 year low, but we're going even lower. Loki now 110 million, bars 101 million. Probably the cheapest Lokis that I've ever seen, definitely in the last few years. And despite that, we can still see 128 here, 120 here. This oversupply despite the 1 year low price range of Loki is pretty crazy. Here's the Proteus next, also coming back under pressure, of course. I think people are reading that it's gonna be nerfed. It's not good for Tech 3 cruisers. Currently selling for 128 million. The bars of Pro-TI are at 122 million. Historically speaking, very cheap. Supply wise here, in the last 24 hours, we still have almost the full front page. And then below that, we still see quite substantial numbers of Pro-TI. So it's just the name of the game. And then here finally we get Tengu, also 1 year low, still trading at currently selling for 126.5 million. Bars are at 121 million, and we still see 46, 16 latest sell orders here, 16, 11, 10 still coming in here. So the Tech 3 market, it's oversupplied. I would need to see what they're actually going to do with the cruiser rebalance, but personally I don't think it's good news for the Tech 3 market myself, even if they take away the skill point punishment. And then finally, at the end of every EVE talk, I'm explaining stuff a little bit more. This one because of the ad that I gave to CCP for FanFest. Who knows, there might be a few new viewers on this one. So at the end of every EVE talk, I take an extra product, an extra segment, just to go through the market and check on different things, just basically grab the pulse. And for this week, I announced it last week, I'm choosing the mining barges because of course we had the Ascension expansion where Rorcal became the very best mining ship that you could fly. It still is, but that has been nerfed substantially, and I feel like the Orca actually became quite competitive even with the Tech 2 mining barges like the Machina and like the Hulk. Hulk is still way better, of course, but compared to a Machina, you know, once you put a little bit of tank on those ships, then the yield drops down towards Orca level. And of course the Orca itself is much more massive. It's basically a tank with a huge hold that can stay in the belt quite a bit longer than a Machina, for instance. So for the solo miners, the Orca I do feel is the ultimate goal. So let's go over mining ships in general. I would say why the hell not? Let's make it mining ships, not just the barges. And so we're gonna start with the frigates. Where are these considered standard frigates? Yeah, there we go. So let's start maybe with the Venture. That actually sees a little bit of an uptick in price here, quite interesting. So we went as low as 200,000 ISK, currently selling for 220,000 ISK, and the buyers are at 200,000 ISK. This is of course your entry level ship, but we can see a little bit of an uptick in price, maybe demand as well. After that, personally, I think you just want to go straight to your mining barges. So let's start with the Tech 1 mining barges. Here is the Coveter chart. Yeah, this is very interesting in my opinion. So we have the Ascension expansion here. They're trading for 30 to 35 million ISK. Basically, nobody wants to fly Coveters anymore, and we drop down to 21 million ISK. That's quite substantial, right? From more than 30 million. But here's the Rorcal nerf, and we're making a little bit of a comeback up towards 30 million, actually selling for 29 million. Bars at 25.8 million. So this was maybe the one speculation that we could have done as the minerals dove to these to their bottoms as well. So did apparently the mining barges, and this would not have been bad. 21 million purchasing, probably even below that because this is an average price. Currently selling for 29 million. There was definitely some money in that. It's actually good in my opinion to see this come back a little bit. Procure next, unfortunately that one is still flat at 17.5 million, used to cost 25 million on average. So this one just got hit really hard, and there's no reason for that one to come back anymore, I don't think. So Procure basically has been phased out mostly by the community. And then here's the Retriever that we actually checked in the regular Tech 1s as well, which had a very similar pattern, but I don't feel like the recovery was as pronounced as with the Coveter. You can see the Coveter right here. Biggest yield of these three, of course. So that one came back a little bit more, but also a little bit of a recovery from the Retriever, from 18 million and currently selling at 23 million ISK. The Tech 2 ships could be more interesting though. So let's start with the Skiff. smallest one with the best tank. Okay. Managed to maintain a price of around 200 million. Bit of a dip, of course, with the Ascension expansion going to a low of 170 million. Yeah, and here we now have two big spikes with massive volume. So I do think that some nullsec mining changed from rorquals to skiffs for security. And currently they are selling for 174 million and 165 million. Actually a little bit of volatility and quite interesting for a Tech 2 ship as well. It managed to maintain its price. So the skiff, of course, not the best yield, but you can get an incredible tank on that. Probably very popular in nullsec, which could be one of the reasons why it actually still maintained a decent price. Although you can see the Ascension and then the rorqual nerf influence right here as we go down from 190 200 to, let's say, 170. That was quite substantial. Next up we've got the Mackinac. This one did see a pretty big backlash, pretty big decrease in price and demand and interest due to the mining changes. Mackinac was your go-to solo mining ship, even in high sec. Best combination of yield and cargo capacity. So these guys used to cost 240 million, is quite substantial. Then announcements, the Ascension expansion, we dive down to 180 million ISK. You know, that's 60 down, a third of the price, a fourth of the price, 25% decrease in price. But now with the rorqual nerf, we're coming back a little bit towards 200 million ISK, 207 million for the sellers and 194 for the buyers. So here the Mackinac definitely very pronounced because it was such an interesting solo mining ship and still probably the best combination of yield and cargo capacity. As a result, apparently it is still coming back, and some people might even be switching from rorquals, which cost an enormous amount of money, to some Mackinacs that can actually do a really good job for their cost. And finally here we've got the Hulk that actually stayed pretty damn popular. I'm quite surprised by that. There's a bit of a dip, of course, in the Ascension expansion to 220 million, which was its low point from before, but it actually recovered from that, and basically normal trade variations within the regular band of 250 million is what I'm seeing here. Probably because the Hulk boosted by an Orca boosted by a rorqual is still a really strong yield, the best possible yield after the rorqual. And so if you didn't want to invest the billions needed for a rorqual, you were still you're gonna use a Hulk in a fleet situation. Terrible ore holds capacity, but if you're in a fleet, that doesn't matter. It's all about the yield. Drop it off and then an Orca or someone is going to come and tractor and pick up the ore that you are mining. So the Hulk actually managed to stay quite strong. At the moment it's on a bit of a downswing, but all of this is normal market variation within a Tech 2 product. There is no not as noticeable a dive down in interest as with the Mackinac right here. So quite interesting. And then let's maybe see if we can grab him. Rorqual, can we find you? Are these traded here? Probably not, or they are? No, they're actually not being traded here. Let's maybe take a quick look at the price here. Very interesting to me is that this is more speculation, up to almost 4 billion on basically the dev block from CCP when it comes to the rorqual changes. But then things settle down quite a little bit, still quite a premium after the Ascension expansion compared to before that. And now, of course, after the nerf, we do have this dive down, and at the moment we're still trading above the previous average of before all of these changes, but it's been subdued quite a little bit due to the rorqual nerfs. And then the Orca, let's take a look at that one. In my opinion, still really what you want to go for high-sec mining, especially if you do a lot of solo mining. Starts out at this trade range, let's say a little bit below 750 million. Here is the dev block. Up to almost 1 billion. Ascension expansion, a lot of interest for Orcas, a lot of people like myself that went from their Mackinac to their Orca, so actually managed to maintain a really nice high price throughout December. But after that, I think basically people that wanted an Orca got in their Orcas, and so now settling back down towards a more reasonable price of 750 million for the Orca right there. So that one recovered premium? No, not so much. Basically, we're trading back in the previous trade range. Maybe the highs will be a little bit higher than before, but other than that, the Orca bubble right here, it happened. It's more people are mining in an Orca, but I just think you're not gonna lose this as easily as an untanked Machina, as an untanked Hulk, and as a result, yeah, basically people needed to make and get their Orcas, but after that things are settling down quite nicely once again. And there we go, guys. That's going to be it for this EVE talk. Getting to the hour. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all next time.